Morning, church. I want to start off with this photo here. Let's see if I can get that going. No. There we go. Perhaps you can see that photo. That's a photo I wanted to use to say thank you. Thank you for those who came down and spent a week in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, and working with us painting walls and doing seminars. We have here Diana is helping as Karen and Bree gave a seminar on domestic violence to women who are part of our nutrition program. We experience a lot of domestic violence. Also, they gave this same seminar to our women who are students at Baxter Institute. Did a lot of other things, clinics. We had, I think, 200 a day out at Lo Mirador de Oriente, the church and the setting where we, Shari and our clinic set up to care for the physical health needs of a community there as well. There was a VBS going on, and then others were doubling the size of the church building, this little small church building of Mirador, by raising the roof there. And just a lot of good things that happened. And we really are thankful for those who came back in July and want you to come. Mirador really wants you to come back. They had a special relationship that they feel for the church here and the group that came down and worked in that little that week mission trip there. I want to thank you for praying for us. It's been quite a challenge. This last year, 62, was not a good year for me. With falling and breaking an arm a couple of times. But thank you for praying that we have recovered to a certain degree. I'm very thankful for God for that. I want to say, please keep on praying. This is hard stuff. And making it hard is some things that we experience on a regular basis. This is one of my students baptizing a woman at Los Pinos Church. Pinos is Pines, is like the Pineville Church of Christ there in Greater Tegucigalpa. Timoteo is the one standing in the background there, his hand on the wall. He's one of our workers. And so the day we were leaving, come back to the States here in December, there was a knock on the door, and Timoteo came to the door. Timoteo said, I'm sorry I missed the Christmas party. It's a faculty, administration, employees' Christmas party. And I said, well, what happened? Why did you get to come? He said, well, I had to use my pickup to take the casket to the funeral, which is a common thing in third world. You find people headed to the cemetery with a casket in the back of a pickup. I said, who died? Well, it was Demas, a 2-year-old son of one of the members of the church. And what happened to Demas? Well, they admitted him to the public hospital, free medicine, and you get what you pay for. And they didn't diagnose him correctly, and he died malnourished. And it's kind of ripped my heart because we've got one of those programs in our clinic for children who come, got the big stomach, or they're very, very thin. We put them in a nutrition program for a year, put their moms in a program of teaching them how to sew or teaching them how to cut hair. And to know this child died, a member of the church, because of lack of nutrition. And it's bottom line on a lot of these kinds of things is just no money for that kind of a thing. It's a poor church. Well, how poor? Well, we got to go, we've gone several times to this church. I got to preach at this church. I studied with this woman as well as 2 other students from Baxter during the Bible study time. And she and 2 other women were baptized that morning. This is actually outside the church building. It's It's kind of like a horse trough kind of a thing they're using as their baptistry. And during the class time, though, I ran over and was taking photos. They were firing up the adobe oven, and they were going, what were you doing? What were you preparing here? We're tortillas and rice. And so they give a bowl of rice and tortillas to all the kids. It's a church of 75 adults, 100 kids. A lot of kids. And they give it to the kids and they give it to seniors every Sunday. I was talking to one of the teachers, Sunday school teachers, a student of ours, about that, and she said, well, if we don't feed them, they will faint on me in class. So it tells you the nature of this poor church, and it's incredible. This poor church has gone off, and they're planning another church up on a mountain. It looks over the city. It's got a beautiful view up there on the mountain. But it's a poor place. No running water, no electricity. A lot of poor people. And Timoteo was telling me we had 15 baptisms. He wrote me in a Facebook message back middle part of December. 15 baptisms in Los Pinos, the church here, but 45 in Diamante. This new church plant. I like the name of the church, Diamante. It's the diamond church. That's how it translates. But obviously it's a diamond in the rough in many ways. But we praise God that a poor church has gone out and they have planted another church. It's the dynamic we see going on more and more in Central America, which is at a flashpoint for church growth. We looked at the text here in Mark, the first chapter. And Jesus has prayed all night. Everybody's looking for you. And he responds in verse 38, let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. He clearly lays out his mission, his purpose, preach. Well, what does that mean by going other places and preaching? Well, the next episode in the Gospel of Mark here is an episode where he shows incredible compassion. An Ebola-infected person of the first century, leprosy, comes up to Jesus. Nobody wanted to get close to lepers. They lived outside the city. You despised the lepers. You didn't want to get anywhere near a leper because it was contagious. And the first thing that Jesus does is he touches the man. The next episode in chapter 2, verses 1 through 12, is Jesus preaching. He's teaching in his house there at Capernaum. And then they tear up the roof and lower the man down in front of him, and he stops all teaching to forgive. The first thing he does for this paralytic is to take care of his spiritual needs. He forgives him, and then he heals him. He's concerned about the heart of an individual first over his physical needs. And then we get to Mark, the second chapter, verses 13 through verse 15 here. Once again, Jesus went outside beside the lake. This is the Sea of Galilee. Luke chapter 2, verse 13. A large crowd came to him, and he began to teach them. As he walked along, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax collector's booth. And this is where we wish we had a video of this event. And it had the sound effects. Because Jesus says next, follow me. You're going to ask a traitor, one who extorts us, to be your follower, Jesus? It had to be thought, if not expressed, by those who watched this event. And I'd like to hear the sound effects too on what, and the big eyes that comes as we see in this next phrase. Levi got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. When the teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, they're the moral monitors of the first century, saw him eating with the sinners and tax collectors, they asked his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" A very good question. The moral rebates, the moral depraved of his society and time, he's eating it. Why does he do that? On hearing this, Jesus said to them, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have come to call the righteous, not to call the righteous, but sinners." Jesus chose to be a doctor. Jesus chose the sick. Jesus chose the sinner. That was his choice. So, I've got a little bit of homework for you. Application. Perhaps today you see someone who's visiting here. How about inviting them to go out to eat with you? You have the lunch bunch. You always go out to Babery's, I think it is, or you go to Soli Luna. You go to those kind of places, and you go with your friends. Well, why not take somebody who's a visitor with you? Why? See? What did Jesus choose to do? Who did Jesus choose to eat with? Or maybe do it next Sunday, not really prepared for it this Sunday. Or perhaps in the week you think about someone in your neighborhood or acquaintance who's going through divorce and the horrors of all that. And you say to them, "Hey, we always eat out for lunch on Sundays. Why don't you come and eat lunch with us?" Why do that? Well, Jesus chose to do that. He chose to be a doctor. He chose the sick. He chose sinners. This is back in May of this year, and this is Everett Hufford. He came and spoke to us on Muslims back in 2008, I believe it was. He did a seminar here at the church. And I got him to do a seminar for our students, and he just loved our students and the setting there in Latin America. He was following the theme of honor through the Old Testament and the New Testament. He promises me he will finish that book and get me that book soon. He's been writing a book for a few years on this topic of honor in the biblical text. And he put a kind of way to apply this. He said, let's talk about honor. Okay, now, a man's in a boat with his mom and his wife. He knows how to swim. His mom doesn't know how to swim. His wife does not know how to swim. They're far piece from shore. The boat sinks. Now, who is he going to save? Who would you choose to save? How close are you sitting next to your wife? Let's see. He said now in the Middle East, he was a missionary to Israel. His daddy was a missionary to Israel. His grandpa was a missionary to Israel. He said the Middle East is no doubt. They would save mama. The honor, the name of the family is most important. They would save mother. And so again, who would you choose? He says now in North America, and he was talking to our students, it's almost always the case the men will say, "I'll save my wife." In Latin America, how would they choose? In Argentina, in our 15 years in Buenos Aires, there was a plaza in every community, and every plaza had a monument to the liberator of South America, San Martin. And it would have also another monument on the other end of the plaza to mothers. Every plaza would have this. It would be of a mother nursing a baby, because the highest virtue in that culture is motherhood. So the next day after Everett Hufford gave this dilemma to the students in that seminar, Maria Nelis, she's standing here next to her husband Hamilton. They're from the Dominican Republic. She says, I couldn't sleep all night. They're newlyweds. They married 1 month before showing up at school in January of last year. Well, what was the problem? I really didn't know who he would choose. Who would you choose to save? It is 2 days later, we had a student who gave a chapel devotional speech. He was talking about being back home during Easter break. And he said, we had a guest speaker who came in El Salvador, where I'm from, and he was giving this lesson. And he told this story. A man is on a ship with his son and his son's best friend. The ship gets into a raging storm. The son is washed overboard, and his buddy, his best friend, is washed overboard. And in the raging seas out there, the father realizes what is happening, and he has a lifesaver. And he walks on the deck up to the edge of the railing, and he says, son, I know where you're headed. I know you're a Christian. I know you're a disciple of Jesus Christ. I know where you'll spend eternity. But your buddy is not a Christian. He's lost. He chooses to throw the lifesaver to his son's buddy. Wow. What a choice. Now the man who told this story says, you may not believe this story, but it has made all the difference in my life. Who would you choose? It's talking about lost and saved. A lot of it would depend on our sense of lost and saved, and the reality of that, who we would throw the lifesaver to. But in our culture, this is kind of not politically correct, labeling certain people lost and other people saved. I mean, that just doesn't seem appropriate, Steve, that we would do those kinds of things in America today. Isn't that judgmental to do that kind of thing? Our faculty and our students have a real, genuine sense what it means to be lost and what it means to be saved. This is Jaime and Karina. And they're from El Salvador, and the little baby, Valerie. Not a Spanish name. Valeria would be the Spanish version, but Valerie, they've chosen to name their little baby, newborn, born maybe 4 or 5 months ago. They're in Tegucigalpa. Jaime has been a Christian for about 6 years. They're first-year students at Baxter. Sitting in our living room, he tells his story. He says, Karina and I met on the soccer field in El Salvador. I was smitten by her. I fell in love with her. And so we would talk long hours of the night together on the phone. And she would say, well, I'm 20. Well, I'm 21, his response. And she would say, well, I'm a college student. She actually went on and got a law degree there in El Salvador. Well, I'm a university student too. He had a facade going, a mask he was putting up. It all came down, though, when he was thrown in jail for doing drugs. And you're given one phone call out. It's got to be a good phone call because you aren't fed in jail. You're fed only by friends, family who bring you food. So he takes a deep breath and he calls Karina. He knows what this means for their relationship. All truths are now coming out. She comes with food. She comes with a prayer. And he says in her presence, God, if you get me out of here, I'll start going to church with Karina and change my life. He gets out. Gets out of jail. But he doesn't change his life. 6 months later, he's picked up for drugs. Second offense. They're going to be 4 or 5 years or more as a sentence on a second offense on drugs in El Salvador. He makes another promise to God. God, you give me out, and I really will give my life to you. Got out. And he said, from one day to the next, I stopped smoking, drinking, doing drugs. On Easter break this past year, he texted me a photo. He's not been one day home in El Salvador on this break, and he's beside somebody he's just baptized. In June, I get this Facebook message, and there are 10 photos of him baptizing individuals up at Diamante, the church I talked about earlier. Jaime has a real clear sense of lost and saved, darkness and light. And he chooses as Jesus chose. Jesus gives us, we're given these 3 parables of Jesus about lost and saved. In Luke, the 15th chapter. And he comes to the end of that chapter with this statement. This is the case, the lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son. And with reference to the lost son, the story ends, this parable ends with, but we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead. He is alive. He was lost. He is found. It was an unusual day seeing this short guy, Zacchaeus, up in the tree. Jesus called Zacchaeus down out of that tree. They go home. And Jesus spends the day with Zacchaeus in his home. He ends this event by saying, Luke the 19th chapter, verse 9, today salvation has come to this house. Because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost. It is really a unique setting that we have. It is the only 4-year college, Christian college, in Latin America. The stars indicate the different countries that our students come from. As far south as Bolivia, as far north as Mexico, as far east as the Dominican Republic. This is our campus from a cliff view down onto the campus. These buildings were built back in 1992. The tall building there is, up at the top is the chapel. 66 steps. The chapel. I fell on step 40. It's a very tropical climate. You would love it. It's 80, going to be 80 today in Tegucigalpa. These are students that are really happy because we got a bus. We need another bus, but we finally got this bus for our students. This is our graduating class from this year back in December. There are 14 here. There's actually 15 that graduated. Oops. Going to do the pointer. But anyway, the individuals here on the far right, on the second row, Juan up there, he's from Bolivia. 4 girls, wife, just gone back to Bolivia. He sold everything to come to Baxter. He sold his car, he sold all his belongings, and we were really wondering how he was going to get back to Bolivia. We had some generous Christians who saw to him getting back to Bolivia, and he's already preaching in the largest church in Bolivia. On the first row, bottom row to the far right is a couple, Udieski and Jeanette. They're Cubans. They will be going back to Cuba as soon as she has her baby. It's due right now. We're hoping for Tuesday. It's be a good day for them, the child to be born. But they are going back to Cuba to join two other couples that graduated 2 years ago, form a team, do mission work in Cuba. To our knowledge, we're the only ones that are able to get Cubans out to study the Bible. We have 8 on campus, and we'll have 2 other families coming to join us in January. We're really blessed, excited about this. I wanted to share a little bit about the choice that Joseville has made. Joseville is the one that got the arrow go down in his head. Joseville is a Cuban as well. His wife is in front of him. Just a really special couple, first-year couple. He's chosen to choose as Jesus did, as his father did. Let me tell you a little bit about his father. When Joseville was born, his dad was an atheist. His mom was a communist official there in Cuba. No interest in God or religion. But Joseville, along with 20 others in the nursery in the hospital where they were born, sick. They had a disease called, they nicknamed it the Pink Panther disease because the children were all urinating pink. They couldn't figure out what was going on. And one by one, little babies in that nursery died. And Joseville's parents and unbelievers, they're grasping for straws. And so they heard about people that prayed. And so they asked these individuals, Christians, to pray for their son. One by one, they died, all but Joseville. Wow, there's something to prayer. So Mom and Dad started studying the Bible. Dad became a Christian, the atheist. Took a year for Mom to become a Christian. He started being very involved in church and studying and preaching for a house church. You can only have a house church in Cuba. It will allow you to build a building. You get the biggest house you can get and a big patio out back. And so he decided to preach and plant another church in a community 40 miles away. Well, there's not public transportation to speak of in that area of Cuba. So he preaches in the morning early, and he bikes at 40 miles to the other place to preach there. Things are going good. Both churches he's working with. Till one day, a member of the church corners him. He says, you're going to stop preaching at that other church of the second church plant. Well, no, I'm not. I'm having great success there. Why would I want to stop? You're going to stop preaching there. Well, no, I'm not. I'm going to continue to preach over there. This supposed church member pulls out a baseball bat and breaks his leg. You are not going to preach there. Well, the Cubans look in on their citizens. And it's frequent that there is a spy, a plant by the communist government church. And it was a spy, obviously, who broke his leg. Well, bones fortunately healed, and his leg is healed. And very likely today, probably about now, he's biking it that second church. It's not a surprise that Joseville has chosen, as he has chosen, to study, to be a servant of God, to be a missionary, a father like he has. You know, you read these stories of Paul in prison, you see these things of persecution that occurred in the first century. These are real things happening today in our world. This is Joseville knocking on a door. This is Renee baptizing a lady in the Pacific Ocean. These are students. Back in February, at the end of February, I asked my students, I said, okay, how many people have you baptized in this month? They're all given a weekend assignment with the church in the area, 35 churches in Tegucigalpa. And so there were 11 end of February. The end of June, 100. At the end of September, 135. I'm hoping for 200. At the end of the school, end of November, 170. That God has brought to become a part of His kingdom. That's Juan, the Bolivian, up in the mountains baptizing someone. That's Nata baptizing someone in Tegucigalpa. That's Ronald from from Venezuela, baptizing someone in Tegucigalpa. This is, I think the McGees were part of this event. At Mateo, I got to baptize these 4 individuals. Was it easy for Jesus to make this choice? To associate with the sleazy, the depraved, the undesirables, the sinners? Remember, He is without sin. Was it easy for Jesus to do that? No. And yes. Because Jesus made a choice. He chose to be a doctor. He chose the sick. He chose sinners. He would choose you today. Why not come as we stand, as we sing?